One of the funny things about life is that it never ends. There's always entertainment. There's always fun. There's always pain. There's always suffering. There's always problems. But by the same token, there's always blessings. But in reality, it's just one thing after another. Good and bad, positive and negative. Austin, what do you mean when you say it never ends?
So it might sound a little bit pessimistic whenever I say this, but especially when you're in business, you're going to realize that every week it's going to be something else, in my opinion. Every single week we encounter something else, a new problem that we have to solve. Now, granted, the problem that we're dealing with may or may not be as difficult as the one previous, but it's still a problem nonetheless that we have to solve. Something that's keeping us up at night that we have to figure out, or something that is slowing down progress of what we're trying to do. And at some point, a person who is new to it or doesn't understand entrepreneurship, you might say, well, if you keep putting in the work, one day all your problems will go away. And I guess I'm Mr. Dream Crusher or what have you.
Well, we don't live in Narnia, so
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you that that's not the case. As you progress, the things that you may encounter may change. Problems that you may have had in the past may not be there, but there are always going to be more problems, more issues that you're going to have to deal with. And I'm going to give you the pessimistic view first, and then I'm also going to give you the optimistic view. And the pessimistic view is, again, saying that this is something that you're probably going to have to deal with throughout your entrepreneurial and business career for the rest of your life, until you decide to exit stage left and say, hey, I'll be a shareholder and I'll just sit in the back and, I'll be on the board or some shit like that. But even if you're on the board, you still have to deal with problems, but it's not all dependent on you to fix them. So that's something that's probably always going to be there until the day that you kick the bucket, right? Sorry. But one thing that is actually very good about this, very good about business and entrepreneurship, is the fact that it never ends. Now you're like, Austin, that makes no sense. You just contradicted yourself. For all the people in the comments, just wait a second before you start typing and listen. So one thing that's also very good about entrepreneurship and business is the fact that there are always problems to solve. And if there's always problems to solve in whatever realm that you're operating in, that means that there's always solutions that can be figured out. And that means there's always an opportunity for you to figure those things out. And if there's opportunities for you to figure those things out, that means more often than not, there's opportunities for you to make money and for you to continue to make money. Because who knows, this podcasting area or space, the way that we see it today, may dry up. And to be honest with you, the influx of podcasts has dried up a good amount because people are starting to realize, one, there's not as much money in it for everyone like they thought it was. And it's not as easy to get traction and get millions and millions of views and subscribers. So the area that you're in may dry up. However, as time progresses, no matter how much AI and technology there is, there's always going to be a need for something. And if there's always going to be a need for something or a solution for something, then you're going to have an opportunity to where you could potentially make money. And that's never going to end. There's always going to be problems that you could potentially solve. And if you think of things like that, that means that you can always benefit from this never-ending cycle that we call life, that we call business, that we call entrepreneurship.
Something very interesting when we were talking about this off mic, right before we turned on the cameras, is that we actually evolved around the premise that it never ends. Dr. Huberman often talks about the dopamine cycle and how the reward system works within our brains. And he points a very interesting fact out in the literature, and that's that our dopamine actually spikes prior to receiving a reward. So that means that if you're running a race, it's not when you win first place, it's right before you cross the finish line. It means to say that right before you eat that Twinkie, your dopamine spikes. Right before you bring that beautiful broad home, your dopamine spikes. It's not in the reward, it's not in the triumph that you have your highest pleasure. It's in the pursuit of the triumph, actually right before you achieve it, which is why when you accomplish a goal or you win at any endeavor, you always find yourself a little sad, a little down, even when you win. And you have that reoccurring thought in your head that simply says, that's it? That's all there is to this? I won the World Cup. And what? We're world champs. But somehow it feels odd. It doesn't feel like it's meant to be all that it is meant to be. It feels like it was hyped up and I don't feel rewarded in the way that I should be. Which brings me to my next point. There's always a higher mountain to climb. It's truly in the thrill of the process that you come alive. When you're sweating during an intense workout, when you're meeting ridiculous deadlines, pulling all-nighters, when Jimmy was writing the essay at 3 a.m. and then he swapped places with Austin while Jose went to go pick up the pizza at 4 a.m. because we were pulling an all-nighter. We had to make that 8 a.m. deadline for school, and bam, next thing you know, we all passed the group project and we just dominated it. We're going to remember the story. You're going to feel the pleasure in the moment. You're going to be like, this is crazy. This is ridiculous. And matter of fact, we actually just had a similar interaction right now. We're sitting on our balcony and we're reflecting on certain issues that we're encountering with our supply chain, with our manufacturers, what have you. And we're just sitting there and we're relishing the moment. Sure, there's some negatives, and sure, you have some bad emotions mixed in with it, and you wish things always went as planned. But plans are meant to be guide rails. They're not meant to be shackles. Nothing is truly going to go exactly how you plan it. And we sat there, and we just said, man, the product that we come out with, that we're developing for you guys and for everybody else, it's not just a simple product. It has a story behind it. It has years, it has cultures, it has heritages, entireties of lifetimes and processes that go into it. And it embodies more than just the product itself. It embodies everything in the process to the product development and launch, and then some, as we previously said. And that's a perfect example. When the product gets here, sure, we're going to be happy, we're going to be excited, but we're going to have a tinge of dopamine drop where we're going to be like, man, that chapter's over for now. But then immediately we have another mountain to climb. Sell the living shit out of it.
Yeah.
So that's why there's always a higher mountain to climb.
And I feel like we've all seen the story sometime before. And there's a certain level of depression that can come with finally reaching your goals and then being asked to relax. So if you think about it from a neurological standpoint, right? The more that you do something, the more that you consistently do something, the more your brain reshapes and retools itself to build neural pathways in order for you to carry out that thing. And it makes it easier for you to do that thing because your neural pathways for that specific task or whatever have strengthened over time. So imagine that you are a hardworking entrepreneur that has built something from the ground up, and you have done it by displaying extreme levels of discipline and professionalism and, what have you, right? And you've carried that out until you finally got the big win. You sold your company for like $1 billion or some shit like that. And then you have a wife or a girlfriend or a family or, something like that. And they say, hey, You did it. It's over. Now we can just retire and spend the rest of our life in fucking Cabo and drink martinis and Mai Tais for the rest of our life and just travel. That's all you have to do. Let's do it. And you have seen people that have gotten to that point and said, okay, sure, wife, sure, husband, sure, children, I'll do that. And then they do that. And then long story short, fast forward a little bit, they hate it. And we've even seen some people take their own lives, maybe not necessarily because of that in every instance, but there have been some instances where they just weren't as happy once they finally got to the top of the mountain.
Well, and you don't have to literally take your own life. It's being sucked out of the process.
Because you have literally built up your brain, this person, for however long that you've been doing this thing, and then all of a sudden someone is asking you to stop doing that. And what entrepreneurs and people of the sort realize that the general public don't is that once you step foot in that door and you're committed to being that person, you said that you're going to be this person and you're going to do this thing for the rest of your life, you make a life pact that this shit will never end. And I think that is something that most people do not understand. And that's something that we understand now. And that if someone is talking to us and they're looking at us kind of crazy, they're going to say, well, why are you working so hard? Why do you consistently do this? What's the point? The point is that when we signed up to do it, we realized that this is something that in some shape or form or some type of capacity, we're going to be doing this for the rest of our life. Now, we're going to have time for, family time, breaks, all that type of shit. Cool.
Of course, priorities.
But we have built up each other and built up a person to where we have to solve problems. That's what we do. Solve problems, figure shit out, make money so we can give it to our lineage, give it to our parents, give it to, our friends, close friends and family, all that type of shit. And we celebrate as well. But it's something to where it's a habit now. It's ingrained in us to do this. So to just stop for us is nonsensical. We're not going to be able to do it. Most entrepreneurs are never going to be able to stop cold turkey because it's almost like a drug in a sense of where once you get in the door and you start doing this shit and you realize the adrenaline and the dopamine that it gives you, like a sport, like a drug, and you can make money and make people's lives better because you're doing it, saying just stop cold turkey is not gonna work for people like us. It never ends for people like us. And we are okay with that. Everyone else that may be around us may not be okay with that. And that could lead to devastation for someone like us asking us to stop.
Imagine being a disciplined fiend. It's actually hilarious.
Like Goggins.
Like Kobe.
And you realize that the people that we're mentioning, because we could go on and list more, but these people are disciplined fiends. And because of that, you might say, they're crazy. I could never do that. But it's also why they'll get the success that you'll never get because they're that addicted to this. And they realize that the journey of building up yourself and personal growth and getting a certain level of monetary success will never end for them.
I want to touch on something, a singular word that you mentioned in this that I think everybody needs to hear. The definition of commitment. And there's actually something super, super fascinating that I just found while looking up the definition of commitment. Commitment. We're going to go through all three definitions. Well, I guess two, because for some reason it didn't feel like showing me the third one right now. Commitment. The state or quality of being dedicated to a cause or activity, etc. Second definition, an engagement or obligation that restricts freedom of action. Commitment, historically, increased in its usage from 1930 all the way up to the early 2000s. Around 2001, it began declining. And nowadays, in 2019, it was recorded to be at the same level as 1976. What is one of the biggest things that we see in today's dating market? The inability to commit. A lot of people do not know the definition of commitment. Y'all don't know the definition of commitment, period. In a relationship, outside of a relationship, in real life, in business, in sports, in your physique, in whatever it is, you can't commit to one thing. The second definition nails, in my opinion, commitment, the word, on the head by saying an engagement or obligation that restricts freedom of action. Jocko Willink has a saying, discipline equals freedom. And some people might say that doesn't make sense because discipline means I can't go out and drink. That's not true. Discipline actually means that you get done what you need to get done. So now you actually have more time to go out and drink and fulfillingly have that time out. And by the same token, you might not even want to go out and drink anymore after that. But what I mean to say by giving you the definition of commitment is we're starting to see a recession in the use of the word commitment, which is correlating, in my observation, before y'all come at me in the comment section, with the inability of people to commit or pledge on one thing and one thing only. Whether that is, I'm going to lose this fucking weight. I'm going to get this fucking six pack. I'm going to leave this fill in the blank. Or I'm going to commit to this lovely young lady. I'm going to retire my dad. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. We're going to move. Hey, Austin, you see that apartment? We're going to move to that apartment. And then in 2 months, you're going to do it. And then you're going to sit there and commit to every single facet of what you said you did because you're going to be congruent with everything that you say. I could go on this tangent for days because it never ends.
Exactly.
And when you commit to something, your commitment never ends within reason.
And I think people would say most people don't show commitment to anything. However, I'd like to disagree.
Commitment to the opposite.
Exactly. I think that a lot of people don't realize what they're truly committed to.
She belongs to the streets.
They think that they're committed to nothing. You know, they don't want to commit to anything. But I think that you just don't realize it. Most people who don't realize that they're committed to something are often committed to underachieving, failure, lackluster attempts at work, lackluster attempts at the pursuit of happiness, just mediocrity.
All around the board.
That's what they're committed to, and they just don't realize it. And in my opinion, that is very dangerous because if you don't realize that you have a problem, you'll never know that you need to fix it. And if you don't realize that you are committed to a life of mediocrity and underachievement, you are doomed to live a never-ending cycle of that underachievement and mediocrity. And that will be your experience for the rest of your life until you realize that that's something that you need to change. So when we say it never ends, it can mean a myriad of things. It can mean, hey, this journey of entrepreneurship and business and solving problems, being a light, a beacon in the world for people to look to when there's a problem and they know that you can solve it, having that happen and you being perspicacious enough to continuously get better and learn, that's a cycle that can never end. I feel like Elon might be experiencing that now where he's in that journey of figuring out the world's problems. And he realizes that there's a long list of problems for the world to fucking figure out. And he's taking it upon himself to figure it out or figure some things out. And he knows that it may not happen in his lifetime. But when world eclipsing shit happens, they look to him to do it. And he knows that it will never end until he fucking dies or until he says, I'm just brain dead and I can't do this shit anymore.
That's a double use of the word we're not supposed to use.
Oh, yeah. But that's also, again, to go to show you the optimistic way of thinking, but it's also the pessimistic way. And I feel like most people's reality is that they're committed and entitled, or what is it, entangled. With the never-ending cycle of mediocrity, and that is what they're living.
Would you rather be known for a behemoth obsession over one thing, or the complete and utter failure of your life because you were committed to the pursuit of uncommitment? Would you rather be the guy who failed with a massive fintech startup but revolutionized the entire fintech industry? Failed miserably. Or would you rather be the guy who has Cheeto dust in his belly button, gelatinous tits, lives in his mom's basement, and fucking chokes the turkey every fucking night to fucking hentai? Is that the bullshit that you want to be committed to? Or would you rather be the guy who makes it on the TV shows, who makes it onto interviews, who people actually want to see succeed or fail by that token? People want to know your thoughts. They want your insight because you've developed a life, a story, a persona that only you could uniquely establish through your actions and your commitment to whatever the hell it might be. It doesn't even have to be profound. If you want to be the best damn rice fucking grower in the world, more power to you. Congratulations. I'm happy for you, and the world is a better place because of you. But I'll be honest with you. In that example, the latter doesn't provide, they only leech from the world. And I think our decisions are very clear. And your decision is entirely up to you. Irrespective of your circumstances, irrespective of where you came from or what you came from, it doesn't matter. Only you
can prevent
forest fires.
On that note,
the AM Club Podcast.
Signing out. Mic check.
The AM Club Podcast.